What's up, gamers? The Red Dragon here, and today we are checking out a story that's running rampant right now across the, I guess, news industry. And I published this on the front page of VGN. I also tweeted it out this morning. And the title is a little misleading because what it is the EA president came out and he's talking about all these future endeavors. He's talking about the EA investment in mobile and tablet. But at the end, he's saying, you know, in the end, we're still very, very much committed to consoles. And he follows that up with a statement that kind of caught everybody by surprise. And this is the statement that's, you know, causing the stir. What he says is, we're very proud of the way EA has evolved with consumers, but I have not greenlit one game to be developed as a single-player experience. So that one statement right there, everybody was taken as saying that there's no more single-player games coming to EA. Now let me finish what he says. Today, all of our games include, and he's saying today, which is right now already, today all of our games include online applications and digital services that make them live 24/7, 365. So, well, it is 24/7, 365 until your servers go down, which happens quite a bit on EA. But anyway, so what he is saying is that single-player only games are going to be no more for EA. So no matter what game they make, if it's a single-player game, they're going to incorporate some type of component, whether it's an ability for you to share your experiences with people on Twitter or Facebook or something, or whether they end up putting in a co-op mode or a multiplayer peer versus peer. They're going to implement something that broadens that experience so that it's not just a one-person experience. Now, whether or not you like this idea or not, you know, that's up for total debate. You know, you can totally throw out some good arguments on either side. And I'll get to actually some of those here in just a minute, but I want to make it very clear for those who have gotten the impression that single-player games are going to not exist anymore. That's simply just not the case. So, a lot of people think that, let's take Battlefield 3 because I think this is a perfect example. Here's a game that started off as a multiplayer-only experience. And so when people heard that they were going to start incorporating campaigns into the releases, they said, hey, you know, this game's going to go all to hell because they've got the developers, they're going to have to pull off and start working on the campaign. So they think that that means less people working on the multiplayer. And you have to go back and you read these developers and as they're being interviewed while the games are in development. And I'm not just talking about Battlefield 3, I'm talking about several of the big game publishers. They almost always have different teams working on different components of the game. So it's not like they've got 40 people who started working on a campaign and the guy walks in the room and he says, hey, I need 20 of you guys to come with me. We're going to start doing a multiplayer component of it. No, what they'll do is they'll probably add, you know, more people to focus on that multiplayer component. So they've got different people focused on different areas of the game. It's not like the same person who makes the campaign has to go and do the multiplayer. You know, it might be that way on smaller projects, but on a lot of these big corporations, that's the way it's set up. It's just like NASA. You ever watched any of those shows where they tell you how the Saturn V rocket was built or something? It took like 400,000 people working on different components. The guy working on the booster didn't turn around and have to go work on the Mars Land Rover. You know, it's just not like that. But they work on their own components. They have their own jobs. And then in the end, it comes together and is built for this one project. Now, whether or not that's a good thing, here's what they're looking at. They're looking at nothing more than marketability. If you've got a game and on the back of it, it says it's a single-player game and that's it, already you are turning away a large population of people who enjoy multiplayer. Same thing goes for if you download a game that's only multiplayer. People will look at that and say, it doesn't have a campaign. Well, I like campaigns, so they're not going to purchase that. So these people, if you look at the data, you know, there's a lot of games to choose from. It's expensive. It's getting harder to sell these games, and so they have to make them as marketable as possible. So what they're saying is, in all of these games, you're going to be able to flip on the back and see some type of probably multiplayer component on it, some way for you to connect with other people, and that way they market it to the masses. So I don't think, like I said, because they have different teams working on different components, I don't think because they're adding this that necessarily single-player campaigns are going to suffer. I don't think that at all. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll get a really good campaign and multiplayer experience. And a perfect example of this is another story that I posted up on the front page of VGN, and it was about Spec Ops The Line. Now, this is a game that recently came out, and the developer just recently came out and said something pretty shocking. He basically said that multiplayer was bullshit, and that's exactly what his words were. And he says it was part of the game that shouldn't have been there. It shouldn't have existed because it was built as a campaign experience. But 2K Games, they looked at their data. They knew that they had to have multiplayer in there somewhere to appeal to the masses. So what they did was they outsourced the multiplayer component, just like I talked to you about. A lot of these companies have other groups, so they outsourced it to a company called Dark Side Studios, who built the multiplayer. And so it wasn't originally intended to be there, but it ended up being there. And so you got a really good campaign with Spec Ops The Line, but if you go look at the reviews, the multiplayer kind of hurt it. Even though it wasn't made by the same people, even though the multiplayer component didn't affect the single-player development, you know, it was thrown in there. And so that's where you can get into the debate as to whether or not it's a good thing or not. But in the end, it's all about marketability. So we can talk about greed. We can talk about what's the right thing to do. But that's the way it is. And so that's the way it works. And so people are going to continue to buy these games. And until they stop, these companies are still going to do this. But I don't necessarily look at it as a bad thing. There's certain games that you buy that you know that you're buying it for the single player. I bought I bought Battlefield knowing that I bought it for the multiplayer. I didn't even finish the campaign. But campaign is great for those people who want to go on and enjoy it by themselves, or kind of get familiar with the game before they jump into multiplayer. So I'm not pissed that there's a single player campaign in Battlefield, but you know, that was part of the game. I've got 2 discs, you know, in my box over here, but I only use one of them, and so that's probably going to be the way it always works. So post below, let me know what you think about this whole debacle, and EA stating that there's going to be no more single player only games out on the market. So that does it for me, The Red Dragon. If you haven't clicked that subscribe button already, please do so. Be sure that you can follow me, catch up with all the latest news and things that we talk about. I always try to keep it real and keep it down to earth while we're discussing stuff. And also check out the links in the description box. I got Twitter, Facebook. You can follow me on there and connect with me. I love connecting with my viewers, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.